Hey there, thank you for tuning in. This is Sew It Goes, a mini series that features different sewing challenges hosted by myself and my friend Hadassa. So, in this episode, the theme is a fabric swap. So, both Hadassa and I have exchanged fabric, and we both don't know what kind of fabric to expect from the other person. And the challenge is to just see what we can come up with based on whatever fabric the other person gives us. So what I decided to do with my fabric was I decided to create a cutout bodycon dress with a slit in the back, and it's about midi length. And my inspiration comes from Fashion Nova. So if you want to see how I made this dress, then stick around for the tutorial.
So you want to try on a crop top and a skirt that fits you well, and you just want to play around with how you want, like where you want the bottom of your dress to start. So basically how much torso you want to be revealed. Take a measuring tape and then measure it. Lay your crop top on top of some tracing paper and make sure that it is flat and smooth. And you want to just trace the outer edge, and you're basically going to stop when you get to the midpoint of the neckline. I decided to trace my crop top first with a pencil because later on I'm going to go ahead and true the lines with my ruler. So now I'm taking my ruler and I'm truing the lines that I just made. And what I mean by truing is I'm basically just making sure that they're more accurate, that they're more straight according to the guidelines of a ruler. So we're not going to accentuate the horizontal line of the pattern because we're actually going to be elongating the side seam line. So you want to line up your ruler along the edge of the side seam, and you want to make sure that your ruler is diagonal, and you want to make a mark along the measurement that you got at the beginning of this tutorial. So the measurement that I got was 4 inches, which is the distance between my top and bottom. After I draw the line for the side seam, I'm gonna make a mark at the bottom of that side seam line and a mark at the end of the horizontal line that was my original hem of the crop top that I traced. So starting from the mark that we made at the end of our side seam line, you're going to draw a horizontal line that is 1 inch. Now I just chose 1 inch because I wanted to have more skin revealed, but honestly, if I could go back and do this again, I would have made this line about 3 inches instead. Make a mark at the end of your horizontal line. From these 2 marks, you want to draw a curve, and the curve is going to represent the cutout of your dress. And later on, we're going to go ahead and true the curve using our ruler. Now we're going to use our ruler to true all of the outer lines of the pattern. Then connect the 2 endpoints that are in the center of the pattern to one another so that you close the pattern. Title your pattern so that you know what it is in the future. So I just put front, I put cutout dress, and then I put the line to know where to line up the fabric on the fold. And you also want to add that no seam allowance is included. This is what the top part of the front of your pattern should look like. So now for the bottom part of the pattern. So what you want to do is you want to take a skirt and you want to fold it in half, and you want to lay it flat down onto your pattern paper. And as you can see, I have a pin here on my skirt, and that pin basically just represents how long I want my dress to be. So I definitely recommend that you try on your skirt and place a pin where you want your dress to end. Then you want to trace your skirt, and I'm going to be tracing my skirt with a pencil since I'm going to go over the lines with the ruler to make sure that everything's accurate. Then I'm going to fold my skirt where my pin is, and this is just going to help me to form a straight line. Sorry that this shot is so blurry. Then after I finish tracing the bottom edge of my skirt, I'm going to take my skirt off of my pattern paper to reveal the pattern for the bottom part of the front of my dress. Now I'm going to true the line that is at the fold of my skirt. And to do that, I'm going to line up the square edge of my ruler so that it is at a right angle between the bottom of the skirt and the centerfold line of the skirt, and then from there I'm going to draw a straight line up with my marker. Use your ruler to also true the top edge of the skirt. The top edge of my skirt is a little bit curved and I like that style, but you don't have to do that. You can have your top edge just go straight across if you'd like. So disregard the lines that you see on the pattern and just follow the instructions that I'm giving you now. So starting from the edge of your pattern or the corner of your pattern, you want to measure and make a mark at 3 inches. And the reason why we're doing this is because we want to compensate for the space that we will have once we create the slit on the back of our skirt. And then you want to find the widest part of the skirt and then make a mark there. Draw a curved line to connect these 2 points. Use your ruler to true the remaining lines, and then be sure to title your pattern just so that you know what it is in the future. And remember to write that the seam allowance is not included. Then you want to cut out your pattern so that it looks like this. So lay the patterns that we just made on top of pattern paper, and you're going to just trace the outer edge of both of the patterns and make sure that the patterns are touching each other so that they form the shape of your dress. So here you can see that the center fold line for the bottom of the dress and the centerfold line for the top of the dress are not aligned. So I'm just taking my ruler to true them so that it is aligned. From the corner of the armhole, you want to measure 2 inches up. And from this 2-inch distance, you want to draw a horizontal line that connects from the corner of the armhole all the way to the middle of the armhole. So I know there are a lot of lines going on right now, but just listen to the instructions that I'm going to give you. So from that horizontal line that we made in our previous step, you want to measure 3/4 of the way out from the armhole and make a mark. Then from that 3/4 mark, you're basically drawing a curved line to connect the corner of the armhole to the 3/4 mark to the top of the shoulder. So that essentially is the middle line that you see here. Then you want to use a marker to highlight the final lines of your back pattern, and then you want to title your pattern. And remember to put that you need to cut 2 pieces since we're going to be making a slit. So we're not cutting this pattern piece on the fold. Cut out the pattern so that it looks like this, and now we can begin transferring the patterns to the fabric. Take your fabric and fold it in half so that the wrong side is facing on the top of the fold. Make sure that you're paying attention to the direction of the stretch. Place your pattern for the top part of the front of your dress down onto the fabric. Make sure that the center fold line of the pattern is facing the fold of the fabric. And then you want to just trace all around your pattern, and you're going to repeat this step so that we have 2 of the same pieces. So there's no need to add seam allowance since we're dealing with stretchy fabric. And you just want to go ahead and cut out the 2 pattern pieces like so. Then you want to fold your fabric in half and then place the bottom part of the front part of your dress on the fabric and trace it. This time I added a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the top and the bottom of the pattern. Cut out your pattern so that it looks like this. Place the back pattern of your dress onto the fabric and trace it out. Remember, we're going to be tracing 2 pieces of this pattern, so you don't want to fold your fabric. So make sure that when you're tracing the second piece of your back pattern that you flip the actual pattern over. That way you'll have 2 pieces that are supposed to be joined together rather than having 2 pieces that are on the same side. So after I traced both pattern pieces, I added seam allowance to the armhole for both pieces, and then I added 1 inch of seam allowance to one edge of the center fold line, and this was to accommodate for the slit. But to be honest, I really didn't need to add a whole inch. I could have added just a 1/2 inch. Sandwich the 2 top pieces on top of one another so that they are right sides facing, and then you want to pin all around the edge. And then you're gonna sew about 1/4 of an inch around the edge. Make sure that you leave an open area along the pattern of the fabric because we're going to be flipping this pattern so that it is right side out. So now you want to basically flip the pattern so that it's right side out. In order to do that, you're gonna go to the open space that we left, and we're basically just going to turn the pattern inside out the way that you would if you had a sock that was wrong side out. So the pattern should now look like this, which is pretty much almost finished, but now we want to just close the open edges, and in order to do that, we're just gonna fold each part of the open edge inward, and we're going to pin it down, and then we're going to top stitch around that open edge. Now you want to take the bottom part of the front part of your dress and you want to fold it over along the seam allowance line at the top edge and pin it down. And then I am going to be using my twin needle to stitch the seam allowance hem, and the reason why I'm using my twin needle is because it's perfect for stretchy fabric so that it won't pucker and that the fabric will lay flat. So this is what my skirt looked like after I hemmed the top edge. Line up the top of the dress about 1/2 inch below the edge of the bottom of the dress and then pin each flap down and sew. Hem the armholes of each piece of the back pattern of the dress. And again, I'm going to use my twin needles to hem the armholes, and at the end this is what it looks like. You're going to take some pattern paper and lay it down. Then you're going to take your 2 pieces of the back of your dress and you're going to lay them down, and you're going to make sure that the wrong side is facing up. Well, actually it doesn't matter. So you're going to lay them down and then you're going to pin them together as if you were going to sew them. And then you're just going to trace the neckline to get that U shape, and that's going to be how we're going to start the pattern for the facing. So your tracing should look like this. And now in order to finish this pattern, you want to draw another line that starts at one edge of the shoulder line and connects to the other edge of the shoulder line. So originally I thought it would have been smarter to start my line 3/4 of an inch from the corner, but then I realized it's not enough space. So just draw your U shape from the edge of the shoulder line. Then you want to cut out the pattern, place it on top of fabric, and then trace it and then cut it out, and then it should look something like this. This part is optional if you're dealing with fabric that doesn't fray, but if you are dealing with fabric that frays, then you want to finish the inner edge of the U shape of the facing. So you could either use a serger or you could just use a zigzag stitch. So this is what my facing looked like after I finished the edge, and I also went ahead and finished the edges of the back pattern. And if you see, I placed a pin where I want my slit to start. You want to sandwich the 2 back half patterns on top of one another so that the right sides are facing. Then you want to pin it down along the edges, and then you want to sew about 1/2 inch away from the edge. So it should look something like this. And now what you want to do is you want to open your pattern and you want to top stitch about 1/4 of an inch away from the center fold line, and make sure that your fabric is laying flat when you do your top stitch. This is what your top stitch should look like when you finished. And now we want to just hem the edges of each side of the slit, and in order to do that, you're just going to fold over the edge of both sides of the slit and then pin it down and then sew it. Line up the facing with the edge of the neckline, then pin it down, and then sew 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the neckline. It should look like this after you finish sewing. And then to loosen up the stiffness of the curve, you want to use scissors to make slits, and then fold the facing to the inside of the neckline and then top stitch. Sandwich the front and the back pattern with the right sides facing, then pin along the shoulder. Then stitch 1/2 inch down from the edge of the shoulder, and this is how it should look. With the dress still inside out, you want to pin along both sides and then stitch 1/2 inch away from the edge. Then after that, I chose not to hem the bottom of the dress just because of the fabric that I'm dealing with, but you can always hem your dress if you'd like to. So this is how my dress turned out, and I hope you guys like it. I love it. I just wish I added some seam allowance because it's a little tight. But anyhow, be sure to stay tuned for episode 3, where Hadassa and I will be challenging ourselves to see if we can put together a banging summer dress in less than 1 hour. So we're going to be speed sewing.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you have any questions or anything you want to share, be sure to leave me a comment down below, and I'll definitely get back to you as soon as I can. Until next time, ciao.